Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another live session from Tiju Sir Academy. This is Swapna, and today we will be discussing a flow chart. Let's wait for some of our regular students to join the live session. So, how are you all? We had a very long break. Good morning, Johnny James. ഓണത്തിൻ്റെ ഒരു ആഴ്ച ബ്രേക്കിന് ശേഷം നമ്മൾ പുതിയ വർക്ക് സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്യുകയാണ്. പുതിയൊരു ദിവസം സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്യുകയാണ് നമ്മൾ. അപ്പോൾ നല്ലൊരു പ്രൊഡക്റ്റീവായിട്ട് തന്നെ എല്ലാവർക്കും വർക്ക് ചെയ്യാൻ സാധിക്കട്ടെ എന്ന് ആശംസിക്കുന്നു. I hope everyone had a good start. Amala, good morning. വർക്ക് സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്യുന്നതിനൊപ്പം തന്നെ പലർക്കും മൺഡേ ബ്ലൂസ് ഉണ്ടാവാൻ ചാൻസസ് ഉണ്ട്. കാരണം വെക്കേഷൻ എല്ലാം കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് നമ്മൾ നമ്മളുടെ യൂഷ്വൽ റുട്ടീനിലേക്ക് വരികയാണ്. അപ്പോൾ എല്ലാവർക്കും ഒരു ഇൻസ്പിറേഷൻ തരാൻ ഞാനൊരു കോട്ട് ഇവിടെ ഷെയർ ചെയ്യാൻ ആഗ്രഹിക്കുന്നു. And the quote says like this: "Consult not your fears, but your hopes and your dreams." നമ്മൾ IELTSൽ പ്രിപ്പറേഷൻ ചെയ്യുന്ന സമയത്ത് പലർക്കും ഒരു നെർവസ്നെസ് ഫീൽ ചെയ്യാറുണ്ട്. എങ്ങനെയായിരിക്കും എക്സാം എന്നുള്ളത് ഓർത്ത്, എങ്ങനെ പെർഫോം ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുമെന്നോർത്ത് പലരും ടെൻഷൻ ആകാറുണ്ട്. And often see that they become nervous. So, എപ്പോഴും കോൺഫിഡൻ്റ് ആയിട്ടിരിക്കുക. And do not consult your fears. കോൺഫിഡൻ്റ് ആയിട്ട് തന്നെ മുന്നോട്ട് പോവുക. We need to move on. We need to be determined. And we have to achieve our heights and dreams. Okay, so I think we can start our sessions. So, hello Shruti. Good morning. Okay, so let's start our IELTS academic writing task 1 today. And as I mentioned before, we'll be discussing a flow chart. So, let's look at the question. Okay, so you must have seen these type of questions earlier. This is a flow chart, or we also call it as process diagram. So, endana, good morning Jubi. എന്താണ് ഫ്ലോ ചാർട്ടിൻ്റെ പ്രത്യേകത? Hello, good morning, Shrikuti. Okay, let's go to the question. So here we are, you can see a flow chart here, and it's a diagram, and it's it's not a life cycle. You can see life cycles, or maybe some manufacturing process, or related subjects. So here what we see is a honey making process by honeybees. Good morning, Minnie. So the diagram illustrates how bees produce honey, summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features, and make comparisons where relevant. So here, unlike the other graphs that we deal in the first task, all the informations has to be written, has to be described. So, മറ്റ് ടാസ്കുകളിൽ, മറ്റ് IELTS academic ടാസ്കുകളിൽ ബാഗ്രാഫ് ആയിക്കോട്ടെ, ലൈൻ ചാർട്ട് ആയിക്കോട്ടെ, we see that we only need to inform or write the relevant informations and make comparisons. So here in this flow chart, we have to write everything. Everything in the sense it is all connected with each other. So we cannot skip any of these information. All the information are relevant. So now let's look at the information first. So before we go to the information, can somebody please tell me what is the structure of IELTS task 1? Yes? Can anyone just type on the comment section? Okay, so we need 3 components, very important components to write IELTS task 1. We have already discussed this in the previous sessions, and let me just repeat it once again. Let me just repeat it once again. So we need to write an introduction. Yes, Amala, you're right. We need to write an introduction, and then there is an overview, or another way we can say overall, and then there you can write 1 or 2 paragraphs according to the idea. Right? Okay, so here let's go back to the question. So what are the things you see? What can you write in the introduction? എന്താണ് നമുക്ക് ഇൻട്രൊഡക്ഷനിൽ എഴുതാൻ പറ്റുന്നത്? നമ്മൾ ഇൻട്രൊഡക്ഷനിൽ പാരഫ്രേസിംഗ് ആണ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്, അല്ലേ? ഓക്കെ, എങ്ങനെയാണ് നമുക്ക് പാരഫ്രേസ് ചെയ്യാൻ സാധിക്കുന്നത്? പാരഫ്രേസിംഗ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ already you know that we have to bring the same idea without repetition of any vocabulary. So can anybody just let me know how you can write a introduction? എങ്ങനെ ഈ ഒരു സെന്റൻസിനെ നമുക്ക് പാരഫ്രേസ് ചെയ്യാം? Okay, so നമുക്ക് we can write it in this way. The flow chart represents the production of honey by honeybees. Okay? Or else we can say the diagram represents the honey making process of honeybees. Okay? So it can be, the same idea can be written in different ways. Okay? Yes. Now let's move to the overall. As mentioned, overall comes after the introduction. So it can be either written along with the introduction or it can be written as the second paragraph. So what do you think is the overall here? Arkengilum parayamo, what is the overall? Yes, Amala, you are right. Amala, introduction the flow chart gives information about production of honey from the honeybees. Okay, yes. Okay, now what is the overall? പലർക്കും ഒരു കൺഫ്യൂഷൻ ആകുന്ന ഒരു കാര്യമാണ് that how to write overall in a flow chart. Right? Because all the information, they are all relevant. It is all connected together, so we cannot actually write a specific information. So what can be written here as an overall? Anyone? See, here we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 stages through which the honeybees make honey. Right? So that becomes the overall. You need to consider how many, you need to take into consideration how many stages are involved in the process. And that becomes the overall in every flow chart. So can you please mention, anyone in the comment section, please mention how can we write the overall? Okay, so here the overall is, it is evidently seen from the chart that there are 7 main stages in the production of honey. Okay? Yes. So that is the overall of this chart. Okay, now the remaining part. So we discussed about the introduction and the second paragraph or the overall, and then we need to move on, and next thing is the body paragraph. Okay, so let's see how we can write the body paragraph. Okay, so we need to connect all these details. So as I mentioned before, we have to connect all the details. We cannot skip any of the process. All the stages are important and we have to mention everything, right? So here we can see that the first stage, we can see that the honeybees are making their hive, right? So they are making their hive, okay? And we can see some cells over there. And from there, the second stage is they go in search of the flowers, okay? And then we can see in the third picture that, good morning, Gagna. Good morning, Sneha. So in the third picture, we see that the honeybees, take the nectar from the flowers, and they again, after collecting the nectar, they carry it to the hive. That is the fourth stage. And from there, they fill all the cells, the empty cells, with the nectar, yes. Then from there we can see the next stage. Some pictures can be really confusing to everyone. So here you can see the next stage. You can see a bee, moving its wings just above the cells. So what do you think is happening there? ആർക്കെങ്കിലും ഒന്ന് പറയാമോ അവിടെ എന്താണ് സംഭവിക്കുന്നത്? കാരണം പലരും പല ആൻസേഴ്സ് ആണ് തരുന്നത്. What do you think is happening there? Juna, good morning. Can you please say what's happening in the next stage? Fifth stage. So we can see that the bee is fluttering its wings just above the cells, okay? It's inside its hive and it's fluttering its wings. So it is actually helping with the process of evaporation, okay? And that is what we see in the next stage. So when the bees flutter its wings, it helps with the evaporation process. So the excess water from the nectar gets evaporated, and then what we get, the final product that we get is the thick fluid, which is honey, and that can be collected in different jars. Okay, so that is all about the process. That is all we understand from the process, right? Okay, now let's look at the language which is required to describe task 1. Let's take a look. So here, what is important for every candidate to note is that we need the sequencing languages. Okay, sequencing languages means every stage needs to be mentioned, and as I mentioned, it has to be connected very well. Okay, so in a process diagram, you will see a beginning stage as well as an ending stage, right? So here, the main thing, the key point to note is that you need to follow the stages. You can see in the picture different arrows, right? So you just need to follow those arrows, okay? So there will be the first stage, the second stage, then there will be a middle stage, and then an ending. So what you see here is the most common sequencing languages. For the beginning stages, you can write different words like initially, at first, to start with, first of all, to begin with, in the beginning. So these, you don't need to use all these together at the same time. It has to be written accordingly, appropriately. Okay, so please note that you don't have to write everything, all these, what we are saying here. So you don't have to write everything. You have to be very cautious regarding that, regarding usage of proper vocabulary. So these are very important in order to describe flowchart. You don't have to write it everywhere, okay? So now, what next? We can write different vocabulary. What different vocabulary can you write in the middle stage? Okay, let's see that. So, secondly, then thirdly, again, according to the stages, that has to be mentioned. Followed by can be written after one stage, okay? Then we have afterwards, meanwhile. Meanwhile can be written whenever you are making a comparison. And that can be written in any chart here as well. Then we have next, after that, subsequently. Joy Thomas, good morning. So these are the essential markers, discourse markers, or we call cohesive devices or linkers. In simple words, we can say it's linkers Okay, I hope you are able to follow. Yes. Okay, so let's move. Let's look at the required vocabulary to end a process diagram. Okay, now you can see the endings. How you can finish writing a flowchart or how the endings can be like. Okay. So in the beginning of the sentence, when you are ending the process diagram, you can use the words like finally, eventually, in time, in the end, ultimately, lastly. So let me remind you once again, the thing is that you have to use it accordingly. So you need a good guidance to use these words. So please never use all the things together, all these vocabularies together. Okay? So now let's look at a sample answer. How you can write a flowchart properly or efficiently. Okay? Let's look at the sample answer. So here is the introduction. The diagram shows the 7 most important stages in the making of honey by bees. So that is the introduction, and here you can see that it's written differently, not like the same way. It's not written the same way as you see in the introduction. And then we see the overall written here. So I already mentioned that the overall can be written as the second paragraph or along with the introduction, but it should be just after the paraphrasing statement. Okay. So the process begins with the honey bees building a hive and then finishes when the honey is ready to be collected and used. So that makes the overall. Okay, now let's move ahead. Let's look at how the sequential language is used here, or how the linkers are used here to connect all the ideas in the flowchart. Okay, so the first thing here is, firstly, the bees have to build a container. This is called a hive, and it consists of many individually built cells. That is the first information. Moving ahead. Next, the bees leave the hive in order to search for flowers. When they find a suitable flower, they collect the nectar from it, which is used to make honey. So that is, they have described the 4 stages, the first 4 stages. Moving ahead. The nectar is then taken back to the hive where the production process can begin. First, why is it written first over here? Can anyone say here? ഞാൻ ഓൾറെഡി നിങ്ങളോട് പറഞ്ഞായിരുന്നു ആദ്യത്തെ ഇൻഫർമേഷൻ കൊടുക്കുമ്പോഴാണ് ഫസ്റ്റ് കൊടുക്കുന്നതെന്നുള്ളത് അല്ലേ? അപ്പോൾ എന്തുകൊണ്ടായിരിക്കും ഒരു പാരഗ്രാഫിൻ്റെ മിഡിൽ പോർഷനിലായിട്ട് ഫസ്റ്റ് കൊടുക്കുന്നത്? ഇതൊരു പ്രോസസ്സ് ബിഗിൻ ചെയ്യുന്നതായിട്ടാണ് കാണിക്കുന്നത്. ഇവിടെ നേരത്തെ പറഞ്ഞു, ദ പ്രോസസ് സ്റ്റാർട്ട്സ്, ഹണി ബീയുടെ ആ ഹണി മേക്കിംഗ് പ്രോസസ്സ് സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്യുന്നത് ഹണി കളക്ട് ചെയ്തതിന് ശേഷമാണ്. when they pour the or when they fill the cells with honey. So it is only after that that the actual process begins. Okay? So adinana idu first ennu ivide koduttirikkunnu, and it is mentioned here, the nectar is then taken back to the hive where the production process can begin. Then first it is put into cells, then following this the nectar must be cooled down. In order to do this, the bees fan the nectar filled cells with their wings. അപ്പോൾ നേരത്തെ പറഞ്ഞതുപോലെ തന്നെ fan the nectar എന്നാണ് പറഞ്ഞിരിക്കുന്നത്. So what do you mean by fan the nectar? I already mentioned that they are helping with the process of evaporation. So what happens when they fan it? There will be air circulation inside the hive, and that helps in the evaporation process, and അതുകൊണ്ട് excess water, nectarലുള്ള excess water evaporate ചെയ്തു പോകുന്നു. Okay, and you can use this language here: fan the nectar, fill cells with their wings. And as a result, the nectar loses its water content, and then finally the honey is produced. Okay, so this is how you can write a sample. This is how you can write a task 1 flowchart. Okay, now it's time for us to clear the doubts. ആർക്കെങ്കിലും എന്തെങ്കിലും doubts ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ചോദിക്കാം regarding flowchart or task 1. Good morning, Reza. Anyone has any doubts? Some things to remember here is that in order to write the task 1 in a descriptive way, you have to mention all the stages without skipping anything. It has to be very well connected. Devika, good morning. It has to be very well connected with the cohesive language, or the sequencing language. Joy Thomas, I did not understand your question. Can you please specify your question? Can you please mention it clearly? Okay, so I hope the session was informative. And I hope there is no doubts. So now it's time for us to wind up the session. Thank you, Navya. Yes. So now it's time for us to wind up the session. So thank you, Reza. Thank you. Okay. So it's time for us to wind up the session for today, and I'll meet you next Monday with another task 1. And till then, I wish you all a good, productive week, and all the best for your IELTS preparation. Thank you. Thank you all. Yeah, I am Swapna. Navya, I am Swapna. Okay, thank you once again and see you.